Thank you very much. I think it was a great panel, the first one. It looks like we need to switch back to English, and if you guys need the headset, the translator, please step outside, pick one of the headsets for your convenience. So we have two dear panelists. Unfortunately, Lisa could not connect. I think there's a technology issue with that, and Ishi is going to be able to sort of join. So we will be let know. So for now, so we need to continue with the two dear panelists. And the panel is about digital banking, which is one of the hot topics, right? Mm. And we've been discussing it for a long while now. And I think this is sort of, there's this drive since the financial crisis in 2008. And I think it was an enabler. Every crisis is an opportunity in a way. Exactly. So I think that the world, the financial services industry globally, they have benefited from this crisis in a way. So the banks, also other FIs, including insurers, asset managers, brokers, they have invested heavily in technology. And we are seeing a lot of digital transformation programs, right, anywhere around the world, including the least developing countries. I think Rishi can talk about that part later on. Turkey is definitely one of them, but I think I was just sharing my experience with Richie in terms of the Turkish banking industry. I think our banks are solid in terms of the technology, the infrastructure. And so that's why perhaps it's a bit overlooked. But for example, our mobile apps, banking apps, well, they are seamless in a way in terms of the customer experience and everything. It's like, one-stop shop, for almost 10, 15 years now. And most of the countries around the world, they are right now shifting to such convenience and such user experience. I think we are a bit one step ahead in this respect. But let me, so I just wanted to sort of make a brief introduction so we can just warm up. Perhaps I can kindly ask my dear panelists to start by introducing themselves very briefly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very glad to be here, and I'm really glad to be a part of this organization. My name is Sinem Cantürk. I am a partner in KPMG Turkey, and also I'm leading the FinTech and Digital Finance team in KPMG.
Wonderful. Richie.
Merhaba, hi. Sorry, I don't speak Turkish. I'm learning though, I'm trying. I've been struggling to remember how to say thank you, because it's very long for somebody who doesn't speak Turkish.
Teşekkürler.
There's another one, right? Sol, is it Sol?
Sal.
Sal, thank you. Sal. So my name is Richie Santos Diaz, and I'm mainly an economic development advisor, so working mainly with management consulting type. So I've had the privilege to work across various governments. I'm from the U.S. of Hispanic origin, and I was living in London, and now Dubai is home for me. Yesterday's weather wasn't good. It was going from Dubai when it was 30 degrees, and then it was raining. It was a big change. And then with today, one of my hats I carry, and why FinTech has become a part of me, is I'm representing an organization called the FinTech Times. So it's one of the global publications in FinTech based in London. And I was responsible for bringing that brand to the Middle East and Africa back in 2020. So that's how, through that, I don't consider myself a FinTech guru by any means, but I got to learn about ecosystems throughout the Middle East and Africa, including your wonderful country, Turkey, as well. So thank you. I'm looking forward to this panel.
Oh, it's a pleasure, definitely. So yeah, let's jump into the discussion here. And perhaps we can start with you and plus KPMG. So, and I personally am aware that you've been involved in the FinTech industry, the discussions, the digital transformation programs for a long while. Globally KPMG, but also the KPMG in Turkey, right? So, but in the meantime, you're sort of witnessing this journey, right? And this journey has been happening for the last 2 decades in a way. So, I'm sure that you're involved in a lot of transformation programs too, digitization programs too. And I think one of the current interests that you have is also on crypto. Yes. So you are also very much open-minded in a way. So looking forward to opportunities as well as the venues, the new venues in the industry. So what does your experience tell you in terms of looking backward for the last 15, 20 years in the financial services industry?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I like to start with how I see the change in the financial system. Then I will come to KPMG side. First of all, regulations. There are a lot of regulation changes in the financial systems ecosystem over the last decade. In the previous section also, everybody nearly talked about regulation changes. And we know that, we all aware that when there's a need, when there's a change in the regulation, there is a need for a transformation. And obviously a digital transformation one. Secondly, customer experience. I mean, the demands and the needs of the customers are changing and demanding substantially with the technological era. And nowadays we are talking about API banking, open banking, banking as a service, platform banking, or blockchain, or crypto assets, crypto custodies, or digital assets, and etc. And the list is expanding every day. And the list, I mean, the change in the technology is creating a change in the needs and the expectations of the customers.
Right.
And it is changing the customer experience point of view. So customer experience is number 2 in my agenda. And number 3 is the, besides the changes in the regulations and the customer experience, I think it's topped over with the competition in the financial area, because the competition in the financial ecosystem is a tough one. There are a lot of players, the banks and financial institutions, factoring companies, or e-money companies, and etc. We know the market is big, but we don't know if it is big enough for all of the players or not. Every financial institution is trying to increase its market share, and it's not easy. So the competition is a tough one. And all of the financial institutions are trying to distinguish or differentiate themselves from the others, while excelling in customer experience and trying to be in compliant with the regulations. So the equation is becoming more and more complex every day. So I think the solution to this complex equation is digital finance transformation for all of the financial institutions, the new established one as well as the traditional ones. So if I come to the KPMG side, KPMG, we see the change in the market, we see the change in the financial services area, and we said that we need to be in line with the change in the financial services side. And we decided to establish a new, special, dedicated, and experienced team, which is dealing with only with fintechs and digital finance.
So this is only for the Turkish team, right?
This is right now only for the Turkish team, and it's a very brand new development in globally KPMG world. So we are one of the first ones, but as far, I mean, we already spent nearly 2 years, and while we are talking with our global environment, global KPMG offices, I think they can take us as an example. Now we are seeing some of other experiences in the other global KPMG offices. So now we are just one team, fintech and digital finance team, and our strategy for fintech world or digital finance world is very simple and it's very lean. We are one-stop service organization for the digital finance transformation for any financial institution, including banks, traditional or digital, including factoring companies, leasing companies, e-money companies, blockchain companies, crypto companies, or more. We know the digital finance transformation is inevitable, but it's not easy. And the needs and the expectations of our clients are different from each other. If we are talking with a newly establishing digital bank, the needs of that digital bank is different from the traditional bank. The need of a traditional bank is pretty much not the same with an e-money institution. So we know that we should support them with an end-to-end point of view. So we are now giving consultancy services to all of the financial institutions, including accounting, tax, information technologies, process, regulation, legal advice, or technology implementation.
Can I just pause you there for a sec? Because I think the brief overview in terms of what is really happening, right, in terms of the banking, financial services, the fintechs, the startups, I think it was great. So perhaps we can just, continue from that point on. Richie can sort of, provide us in terms of the regional outlook, right, Richie? Because I know that you are based in Dubai, but you're a traveler, right?
Yeah.
You've been to a lot of countries, but your main focus is, again, how to ensure the access to financial services in a lot of countries, because it is still a challenging issue, right? Speaking of Africa, for example. So, remembering the main topic, right, of our panel, which is about digital banking, digital financial services. So what are your insights and inputs?
Yeah, so especially the last 6 months, like this year alone, I've only been in my home for 10 days. Like, to just give you some context of how much I've been traveling. I think it's the last 3 years of no traveling a lot. I think it's just gone crazy. But yeah, so to answer your question, the Middle East and Africa as a whole is, even though it's very extreme, right? Because you have some of the wealthiest countries in the world, like Qatar, UAE, with very high GDPs. But you also have in the Middle East and Africa, if you lump it, you have 19 out of the 20 poorest countries in the world are in Africa. Burundi being the poorest one, right? So they all share a similarity from this, from me kind of understanding the region and being there, is the theme of financial inclusion, right? In many countries in Africa and universally, I'll give Egypt. So I went to Egypt 3 times this year. 2 out of 3 Egyptians don't have access to a bank account. That's 66%. That's a lot. And that's not just an Egyptian story. That's across, much of Africa as a whole, right? I had the fortunate opportunity to go to Uganda fairly recently. And there, while the majority, don't have access to these things, the likes of mobile especially is big, especially East Africa, Kenya, M-Pesa, these ones where, digitally was able to give people financial inclusion through something basic like a phone, not our smartphones, but a basic phone with just using USSD technology. And just that kind of like that digital access for someone so basic. Some stat, for example, in Senegal, it's like 70% of people can't read or write, but some similar percentage has used mobile money in the last 30 days. So they can't read and write, the majority of the population, like any developing economy, but they're able to do things digitally on their phones in the last 30 days, right? So you see this throughout the rest of the continent. And it's not just Africa as well, like even in the Middle East, because not every country is Qatar or the UAE. There's also poorer countries, relatively poorer, and the financial inclusion story is still there. Like Egypt, which is both Africa and the Middle East, is one example I gave. And even in the UAE or developed economies, the majority of the population is not wealthy or even middle class. So you still have that issue where, like, I think I read somewhere before, in Dubai, for example, I think 75% of blue-collar workers, don't have access to a bank account. So the theme of financial inclusion and the theme of digital banking has kind of, and digital as a whole, like digital transformation, has been playing a strong role, and it's much more noticeable in Middle East and Africa than, say, Europe or America, in my opinion, because it's much more impactful. And being here now in this region, you see it more impactful. Whereas in Europe or in America, in my opinion, it's much more, disrupting something. Whereas here, it's making a huge impact. And I think with the theme of, digital banking, but just digital, has been playing a huge role in financial inclusion in the Middle East and Africa.
Oh, well, I think that is great in terms of looking into the countries where there would be this, sort of a challenge in accessing to the physical financial services. I guess that is sort of a short answer to the question that the panel, as it is titled, as is digital-only banking possible? So I wish that Lisa was able to connect because AirTM is one of the leading sort of digital finance services, and their main focus is on money transfers and remittances in a way. But they also look into the South American countries, which again, where the access to banking as well as financial services is a challenge. It's a huge challenge there too. Yeah. So in order to complete this picture, I guess what we can do is, there's no comparison when it comes to the Turkish economy, Turkish demographics, population, this and that. But I think digital banking is definitely a drive, right, currently. And we see also some banks, and because of the regulations too. Perhaps we can just, continue from that point on, and picking up from where Richie, left.
Okay. I mean, in Turkey right now, to your question, I have two kinds of answers. The simple answer is I see endless opportunities in the market right now in Turkey. When we are talking about digital banking or traditional banking or any other financial institutions, sorry. But the complex answer to your question is, I think every financial institution should do their own homework to understand where is the right opportunity in the market. Because to be honest, I think not all of the newly established digital banks or the financial institutions now operating in Turkey, starting to operate in Turkey, will survive in the near future or will be profitable. I'm saying a bad thing, I know, but unfortunately I think this is true. Because sometimes people or investors or entrepreneurs come and ask me, is there a need for a digital bank in Turkey? Should we establish one? Or how many e-money institutions are there operating in Turkey? Should we establish one? But I think this is not the right question to ask, or this is not the right approach to start your business. I mean, you should not consider to be just another one in the list. You should consider to be the one in the ecosystem. In order to be successful, in order to survive, and in order to be profitable enough. So to find that the one, I think you need to do your homework. You need to understand the dynamics of the country, as you mentioned in your speech. You need to understand the dynamics of the country, the economy of the country, the changing regulations, the changing customer behaviors, the ups and downs, the advantages and the disadvantages, or the failures, the previous attempts, and etc. So that after that, whenever you find the right solution for the right targeted audience with a correct go-to-market strategy, I think you will be subject to a success story. So my expression for the digital banks is not seeing just the opportunities, but creating your own opportunity to a suitable environment.
Can we just, possibly drill down on in terms of your last point, what would be the main differentiators creating a competitive edge for those newly established or to be established, to be registered, digital banks in Turkey?
I think financial inclusion, as you mentioned again, is a critical point of view because we know most of the banks in Turkey are very digitalized. Now we are talking about digital banks, but all of our banks are enough digitalized already. So being a digital bank is not just having a mobile application or digitally onboarding a customer. So it should be something else. It should be just related with a customer experience, or you should, I think, you need to target a different audience, not the already customered ones, but the other unbanked population. You should have an impact on the financial inclusion. You should focus on your new list solutions and mainly considering with a lot of collaboration, I think.
That's great. Richie, perhaps I can get your insights on that too, because again, you have this regional comparison and crossover experience. And so I think this new generation of payment institutions, some of them have been converting their business partly or entirely into digital banking ones, right? And I mean, having this virtual account, for example, enabling money transfer services, these are sort of, you know, banking services in a way, and they become prevalent and massive and sort of widely available in many countries. Again, well, they also do a lot of cross-border services. So, but versus the banks, right? Well, I mean, these are the big players, and they've been there for a very long time. So how do you think that these new generation of financial services entities, let's put it this way, banks, can stand a chance against the conventional players?
Yeah, I think, Sinem, you touched upon a good point, because it's, you know, you have to understand the market that you're dealing with, right? So you know, Turkey, I mean, this is only the second time in my life I've been here, but I've gotten to understand it, you know, the market. And you guys have a pretty developed, you know, compared to much of the world, a pretty developed financial services ecosystem. You know, you look across different parts, like I was saying earlier, with Africa, where that infrastructure is not even there, where most people live in rural areas, and, you know, going to an ATM, let alone even digitalize. And this is kind of what I wanted to say earlier, that kind of, it's better to give that to them in terms of, you know, digital banking or something, because they don't have the infrastructure already to do this, right? So that's where I was saying earlier, where how impactful it is. And that's where the banks, to kind of touch on your question, have to understand what markets they're in. If you're in some market where, let's say in parts of Africa, various parts of it, where the majority live in rural areas, can't even access an ATM, you know, and let alone being unbanked, like just even having the infrastructure there to access these things physically, then obviously the hymn of financial inclusion has to be altered, where digital is obviously going to be imperative, but also needs to be accessible for all. So even, you know, I have the pretty cool phone of this, but not everybody in the world has this phone, right? Yeah. Most people have the basic one. So you need to, you know, target that audience in those parts of, let's say, Africa. You know, and Turkey, you know, Turkey is much more developed in terms of its financial services economy, relatively high middle income economy, but it's also a young population. It's, you know, these things that you have to factor in, that the banks, I don't know if they've left already, but the banks have to factor in terms of, okay, this country has, you know, you have to alter it based on those needs, right? And then in the country like the United Arab Emirates, where I'm based, 90% of the population are expats, or they're not from there. So across different countries, right? And actually the largest group in the UAE is actually Indian. So that's nearly half of the population is Indian. So then you also think of these things as well, in terms of, like, it's not just the socioeconomic, but even like so like, for example, like, not forget banking, just when I call like hotlines for my phone or whatever, you'll have it in Arabic, English, and then often Hindi, because half of the population is Indian. So you have to, it's just like understanding your customer at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
So it's like financial services, banks are not different from telecoms or whatnot. And in the case of Africa, where telecoms and banking are very intertwined, it's very much something simple as just trying to understand the customer, right? And that's what the banks need to further do.
Okay, so perhaps before moving to the last round of the questions, so I might have to ask the question, as the panel suggests, right? Is digital-only banking possible? So I know that we might have some contrarian views, because I know that even though you work with the banks, but you also work with the startups, with the fintechs too, so you're sort of sitting in between, not splitting hairs, of course. But you are also pro-fintech, I know, so, and based on your business and everything. But since we heard already from the bankers in the previous panel, perhaps I think we have the luxury to offer some contrarian views here. So the question is digital-only banking possible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. It is very contrarian, thank you.
Yes, it is. Let me start with some history. As you mentioned, Mustafa, the traditional banks are in our lives since 15th century. So they have a very proven and solid strategy, procedures, customer experience, customer solutions, and of course, revenue generation models. And then technology started to change, and they adapted themselves by building up some new channels like internet banking, like mobile banking or ATM channels, and etc. But digital transformation for banks is not just having a mobile application or internet banking or just digitally onboarding a customer. It should be something else. So there was a shortfall in the traditional side. And this was the time, I think, when we first met with the fintechs. And the fintechs came into our approach and provided low cost, provided speed, provided more solid and more smooth and seamless customer experience, and more solutions and financial inclusion. So these fintechs were a solution for that traditional banking shortfall. And this made an impact in the ecosystem. After that, I think when the banks and the fintechs begin to come together, and when they start to work together in a collaborative way, they closed each other's weaknesses, and this was the time when we met, when the bigger impact occurred. Now we are talking about the digital banks, and this is where we are heading to, I think. So I think if the digital banks can position themselves in a good position, they can be the next generation's banking environment. So I said, yes, it is possible. Because if the digital banks can position themselves not just as a bank, but also as a fintech, I mean, a collaboration model in itself, I think in that time, we will see the biggest impact in the market, and they will create a successful story in the upcoming years, I think.
Okay, Richie.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Like, I think digital banks can exist because a lot of people are doing it. I mean, most of you probably haven't been to a physical bank yourselves, right? So
unfortunately, yes.
I think if there's a stat, I want to try it. Hands up. Have you not been to a bank the last 30 days? Raise your hand. Yeah, it was about, they said over half, so about half, yeah.
But we have bankers already in the audience.
Every day they are visiting.
Yeah, true, that's true. You guys don't count. Margin of error. Yeah, so you know what's interesting is, especially, you know, I keep talking about the wider region, right? So, and the offering too. So like in various parts of Africa and other parts of the world, you see, I call them the super apps, where they started off as like one thing. So for example, they were, I don't know, payments, but then they kind of expanded their portfolio through time, where they're offering like everything, right? And it's kind of like you said, what else? So it's like, you know, the likes of M-Pesa in Kenya, or other ones similar, I call it super apps, where they started off with one thing, but now they're offering loans, they're offering remittances, they're doing all these different things. That I guess goes to your hymn, that it's bringing that innovation, and it's something else, not just going digital, quote. So of course, and in other parts it's absolutely, you know, necessary, because most of them have little or nothing to get that inclusion of financial services. So if you're a super app, you're offering all of these things. I mean, a good example is in Uganda. There's a company called SafeBoda. And it's basically like, you know, the tuk-tuk, like the motorcycles, like a cream of them, or an Uber, but of motorcycles. So it's that company. And then they kind of became this and this and that, and then now they're a fintech. So you see this across a lot of parts of the developing world, because they have to, because it goes back to my theme of infrastructure, and digital has to play a part of that, because it's something that they don't have otherwise, and it's that him I'm just saying of financial inclusion. So yeah, absolutely, digital banking can be possible, because in parts of the world they don't have any other option.
So since we are running out of time, if there is no question from the audience, perhaps I can just, you know, recap the panel in a way. Do I see any hand? Okay. So I think I like to be futuristic, right? Because finance is all about future in a way, and the whole technology, whole innovation, whole digitization is all about the future, because not only that the customers would like to be happy in terms of using that product, but also banks, they need to sustain their business. Not only banks, but also other FIs too. But when we started, talking about crypto some years ago, so some crypto enthusiasts, they were saying that blockchain plus, we are going to revolutionize banking. So we are going to sort of make sure that they will be disappearing from the landscape. No, I like the futuristic angle of it, but sometimes it is a fantasy in a way. Yeah. So going back to the panel, topic, is digital on the banking possible? It is possible, but I think we should be also contrarian to that one by saying that the banks, the conventional banks, they will be there by evolving in a way, but they will be there. And physical banking will be a reality regardless of the landscape in a way, because there are lots of functions, features. I don't want to be empathizing with the bankers because they are the experts on that. Jakub Bey, you can wrong me in terms of what I say, but I think the physical angle of it in terms of safekeeping products and then the future of banking, as well as a lot of services, I think they need to be there. I don't know at what scale, but they need to be there. So that would be my recap. I'm happy to discuss after the panel, but I think we are out of time.